Later today, Boris Johnson is expected to confirm his plans to end almost all the COVID laws from next Monday, and that's despite a continuing and increasing rise in cases.
The Prime Minister will also warn the public to keep wearing masks indoors as our freedoms come with a warning. Well, joining us now is the Health Minister, Edward Argar. A very good morning to you, Mr Argar.
Morning.
If you want people to carry on wearing masks indoors, why get rid of the rule?
Well, because we think now is the right time to look at moving to step 4, and we will, subject to what the Prime Minister says later, be issuing clear guidance. And I, like the Prime Minister, have trust and faith in the innate common sense of the British people to move away from having to be compelled by law to reading that guidance, to forming a common sense judgment on the circumstances when they will perhaps wear masks or behave in a particular way. And the question I would pose is, if not now, in terms of the easing of the legal restrictions, when? And I say that because we're going into
I'm not talking about all of the legal restrictions. I'm talking specifically about masks. You are making it an individual's responsibility to wear masks, but your guidance is going to be, please wear the mask. If you get rid of the rule on mask wearing and enforcement, it means far fewer people will wear masks, even though you want them to. So why get rid of the rule?
I trust the British people's common sense based on guidance. We get guidance from government, from other organisations every day of our lives. We read it, we reflect on it, and we form a common sense judgment. Yes, but if you want someone to do something and you think that it is having an effect, then you legislate for it. For instance, seatbelts or driving on the left-hand side of the road. If you want people to wear masks, why would you get rid of the rule requiring them to? We want to give people guidance, but we want them to exercise personal responsibility. We don't think it's necessary.
So you don't mind if people don't?
We don't think it's necessary for that to be compulsory.
But would you agree that it's confusing? It's sending out an ambivalent message, and I would suggest that it's very similar in its ambivalence to the so-called amber zones of countries where people were legally and are legally allowed to go, but for about 3 or 4 weeks after that was introduced, they were told that they shouldn't go. So they were allowed to go, but told that you'd much rather that they didn't. And you talk about the public willingness to cooperate. Well, actually, a lot of people went, didn't they? A lot of people went on holiday to amber zones, and they're there as we speak. Susanna's point is that basically, if you remove the legislative aspect of this, fewer people are going to wear masks, and yet you want the same number of people to wear masks. And it's a contradiction in terms. That's the point.
Well, I take the point you're making, Richard, but I don't think it's as binary as that. I don't think we want to continue living under a set of legally enforceable obligations rather than moving towards clear guidance. And the guidance I think you'll find later today, Secretary of State will announce it in the House later. I think you'll see clear guidance, unambiguous guidance, and people will then make a personal judgment. And that's how we live in this country. What we've had to do over the past year has been exceptional to meet exceptional circumstances. But I don't think any of us would want to see that continuing in legislation for any longer than was necessary. And as we see the vaccination programme rolling out very successfully, and while infection rates are going up, but hospitalisation rates and death rates, while rising, are rising much more slowly, for example, than when we had similar levels of infection in January. And as we approach school summer holidays and warm weather, people outside, we know the virus doesn't transmit anywhere near as well outside. This is the right moment, we think, to be looking to ease those restrictions and move towards guidance, personal responsibility, and also to focus in parallel on the very long waiting lists of people in the NHS as well.
Well, personally, we have our personal opinions on this programme. Personally, I actually welcome the return of personal responsibility. I do think that we've been told what to do for long enough, and we are grown up enough and sensible enough to make sensible decisions. And we know that 70% of the British public will have said in polls that they will continue to wear the mask. So let's hope that that's true. Can we move to something else? This terrible story this morning about the racist and racial abuse online to the England players last night after the penalty shootout. I mean, quite disgusting messages have been tweeted, as Susanna was saying earlier, not just on a one-to-one level, but so everybody can see them. And many of them stayed up for hours before the social media companies took them down. You've got a bill that's coming into Parliament quite soon. I think it'll actually become law, all things being equal, this time next year, which will basically give you the power to prosecute social media companies who don't take these posts down and actually make life very difficult for them. Does that mean that if that law was in place now, the people who sent these messages could be chased up as well, not just the social media companies, but that there would be prosecutions of the individuals who've sent these messages.
Well, I share your anger and huge disappointment at that behaviour. I listened to your piece at about 6:05 this morning when you were talking about this, and I'm incredibly proud of our national team, a young team who's done an amazing thing for our country, and I think we haven't heard the last of them. They will do fantastically in the future. But there is no room for racism in our sport or in our country. To your specific point, I understand that the Met Police have said they are looking into and investigating these online messages of racial abuse, and they will consider whether a criminal offence has been committed there. You're right about the online safety bill, which will see, I think, up to 10% of the revenues of a company being able to be the fine if they don't take action to take these down and to prevent these sort of messages going up. And although it's not law yet, following your piece at 6:05 this morning, I spoke to the Culture Secretary, and he's been very clear. He's spoken to footballers in recent months about this issue. He's clear that the companies know this is coming, and there is no reason why, even in advance of this legislation, they shouldn't get on with getting their act together and tackling this issue.
And will you put more power to the police's elbow in direct conversations as a government to the Met? I mean, for example, I see that in May this year, there were 12 men who were arrested or interviewed under caution by the Met under suspicion of using words or behaviour or displaying written material with an intent to stir up racial hatred. Messages of the kind we're talking about. So it can be done. These morons can actually be identified, named, shamed and prosecuted. Will you be, I'm not saying leaning on the Met, but will you be encouraging the Met to go all the way and get these people who sent these messages last night and are still sending them this morning into court on charges?
Well, Richard, while the policing is a matter for the Met, my personal view is very clear that I would hope they would investigate vigorously and swiftly, and assuming they can get the evidence, take all the actions they are able to do within the law. There is, as I say, no place for this sort of behaviour in our country or in our sport. And these people, frankly, in my view, can't call themselves sports fans or football fans, because everything they are doing goes 100% against the ethos and the spirit of our national game.
Do you support players taking the knee before the match?
Yeah, I mean, my personal view on this is we live in a liberal democracy. That's one of the wonderful things about our country. People should be entirely free to make their protest, to make their statement in whichever way they see fit, as long as it doesn't harm others, and clearly taking the knee doesn't harm others. They should be entirely free to do that.
Do you think think football fans have a right to boo players who take a knee, having seen what happens to players after matches? Do you think that you should be more critical of the fans who boo the players who take a knee? Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, said football fans have a right to boo the England team for taking the knee. She said, I just don't support people participating in that type of gesture politics. Is it gesture politics that can be booed?
I think anyone, as I say, in a liberal democracy, I welcome the fact that people can make their protest by taking the knee if that's what they want to do. I don't want to see our fans booing our team. I want to see them cheering our team. It's possibly why I'm a little hoarse this morning on your show, because that's exactly what I was doing last night, cheering them on. And frankly, my message to all of our fans is we've got a fantastic team. It's a young team, but it's done amazing things already. Let's look forward to next year and let's keep cheering them all the way.
And on that note, we have to end it. Thanks for your time.